The fog hung heavy, swallowing the road whole. Officer Mason's cruiser rolled slowly through the forest, headlights barely cutting through the mist. Zara, his K9 partner, sat alert in the back. Then she let out a low growl. "What is it, girl?" Mason asked, pulling over near a twisted metal wreck barely visible off the road. A truck had smashed into a tree, the cab crushed like a soda can. No sign of the driver, no blood, just silence and shattered glass. Zara bolted from the cruiser, sniffing hard. She darted into the woods, Mason close behind. Minutes passed. Then Zara barked sharply, standing by a small figure crouched behind a mossy rock. A boy. He was maybe 8, shivering, covered in dirt, his eyes wide and hollow. "Hey there, buddy," Mason said gently. "Neil, what's your name?" The boy blinked. "Eli. Are you hurt?" Eli shook his head. I ran." Mason frowned. "From the truck?" Eli didn't answer. Zara sat beside the boy, tail still, ears up, watching him. "Where's your mom or dad?" Mason asked. Eli stared at the ground. "They told me to stay quiet." "Who did?" A beat of silence. "I don't know. The man who took us." Mason's heart pounded. "There were others?" Eli nodded slowly. "3 kids. Me, Sarah, and Leo. He said, if we ran, he'd hurt them." Zara stood, tense. This wasn't just a crash. Mason grabbed his radio. "Dispatch. I need backup. Possible abduction case. Suspect fled the scene. 1 child recovered. Others possibly in danger." Zara circled Eli, then barked once. Sharp, focused. She had a scent. "You ready, girl?" Mason asked. Zara growled low, eyes fixed ahead. "We're gonna find them," Mason promised. Eli whispered, "Is she a police dog?" Mason nodded. "She's the best there is." Zara darted into the woods again, leading the way. Mason scooped up Eli. "Hang tight, kid. You're safe now. Let's go get your friends." Through the fog, the forest waited. Silent, cold. But Zara was already on the trail, nose down, tail stiff. Whatever evil was hiding out there, it had just been found. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, as the hospital hallway echoed with hurried footsteps. Eli sat on the edge of the ER bed, silent, small and shaking. Doctors hovered, whispering words, like non-accidental trauma and possible abuse. But Eli didn't flinch, not until Zara padded into the room. She walked straight to him and rested her head on his lap. Eli's eyes filled with tears. He didn't cry. He just leaned closer and whispered, "You came." Mason stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. A nurse glanced at him. "He won't speak to anyone. Just your dog." Mason stepped inside. "Mind if we sit a minute?" Eli didn't answer, but Zara licked his hand, gently. The bruises on Eli's arms were old, yellow and green. The ones on his back, fresh. They didn't come from a crash. Mason knelt beside the bed. "You're safe now, kid. No one's gonna hurt you again." Eli looked at Zara, not Mason. Then he whispered, "Don't let them take me back." Mason froze. "Back where?" he asked softly. Eli's lip trembled. He wrapped his arms around Zara's neck and buried his face in her fur. "She found me," Eli mumbled. "She didn't leave me." Zara stood still, calm, protected. Her eyes never left the door. Mason tried again. "Eli, we need to know where the other kids are. Can you help us?" Eli finally looked up. His voice was barely there. "They said they'd hurt Zara if I told." "No one's gonna hurt anyone," Mason promised. "We just need to know where." Eli hesitated. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a torn piece of paper, muddy and crumpled. A map, hand-drawn. He handed it to Mason. "That's where he takes us. To the place with the cages." Mason's grip on the map tightened. Zara growled low again, sensing the shift. Mason turned to the nurse. "Get child services on standby, and a tactical unit." He looked back at Eli. "You just saved your friends." But deep in Zara's eyes, something else stirred. She knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Zara wouldn't stop pawing at the backpack. It sat by Eli's hospital bed, muddy and torn, almost forgotten until Zara growled and nudged it with her nose again. Mason crouched down. "What is it, girl?" He unzipped the bag slowly. Inside, under a crumpled hoodie and a cracked flashlight, was something burned at the edges. Mason carefully pulled it out. A folded sheet of paper, half scorched, half soaked. A map, and tucked inside it, a photo. A group of kids stood in front of a wooden sign. Camp Greenwood. Eli saw the photo and instantly looked away. Mason studied the image. The cabins in the background looked old. The trees were tall, thick, deep woods. The smiles on the kids' faces didn't reach their eyes. He stepped out into the hallway, phone in hand, and searched. Camp Greenwood. Closed. Shut down 2 years ago. The articles were grim. Neglect allegations, hidden abuse, unlicensed staff. Mason felt his stomach turn. He returned to the room, holding up the photo. "Eli, was this where you were?" Eli didn't answer. Zara whined gently and nudged his arm. Finally, Eli spoke. He said no one would find us there. He said no one cared. Mason sat on the edge of the bed. Camp Greenwood was shut down. No one's supposed to be there. Eli looked at him, eyes full of fear. "But they are. The man, he lives there now. He said it's his camp, his rules." Mason's jaw tightened. "And the other kids? He keeps them in the basement of the old mess hall." Eli whispered. "No windows, just chains." Zara barked once, sharp, focused. The pieces were falling into place, fast and dark. Mason radioed dispatch. "We've got a lead. Abandoned Camp Greenwood. Possible hostages on site. Request immediate backup and aerial support." Eli reached for Zara, gripping her fur like a lifeline. "You'll find them, right?" Mason nodded. "We will." But in his gut, he felt the clock ticking, and as Zara stood by the door, tail stiff, nose twitching, she knew the worst was yet to come. Mason leaned against the hospital wall, phone pressed to his ear. His brow furrowed deeper with every second. "Run it again," he said firmly. "His name is Eli. Around 8 years old, brown hair, thin build. Came in from a crash off Highway 17. The voice on the line replied, tense. "We did. Twice. There's no Eli in our foster system. No recent placements. No medical records. No guardians. Nothing." Mason's stomach dropped. "That's not possible." "I'm telling you," the woman said. "It's like this boy doesn't exist." Mason hung up, heart pounding. He walked back into Eli's room, trying to keep his face calm. Eli sat on the bed, arms wrapped around Zara like she was the only solid thing in the world. Mason sat down beside him. "I called Child Protective Services. They're still looking, but..." He hesitated. "Your name didn't come up in their files." Eli looked down, silent. "You ever go to school?" Mason asked gently. Eli nodded. For a little. Then the man came. He said school was for other kids, not for us. Mason's voice tightened. "What did he call you?" Eli swallowed. "Number 3. Zara let out a low growl, her eyes flicking toward Mason. "Eli," Mason said, steady and kind. "You're not a number. You hear me? You're a kid, a real kid, and we're not giving up on you." Eli's face crumpled. His shoulders shook as he buried his face into Zara's fur. "I don't want to go back," he sobbed. "Please, don't let them find me." Zara didn't move. She sat firm, her body pressed close, her eyes locked on the door like she'd guard him forever. Mason stood and placed a hand on her head. "We won't let anything happen to him," but his mind raced. No name, no records, no guardian, an abandoned camp, and 3 missing kids still unaccounted for. Something much darker was unfolding, and time was running out. Zara suddenly stood, ears alert. Somewhere, someone had just made a move, and she felt it. The hospital room was quiet. Too quiet. Eli sat curled beside Zara, his small hand gripping her collar like it anchored him to safety. Mason returned with 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Got you something." Eli didn't move. "You want to talk about Camp Greenwood?" Mason asked gently. A long pause. Then Eli whispered, "There were more kids." Mason sat down slowly. "How many?" "I don't know. 5, maybe 6. Not all at once. Some were there before me. Some didn't come back." Mason leaned forward. "Do you remember names? Anything?" Eli reached into his backpack again, slowly, like it hurt. He pulled out a wrinkled photo. 2 kids, standing in the woods. Him and a girl, maybe 9 years old, but her face had been scratched out with something sharp. Eli stared at it. "She tried to run. She got caught." He said she wouldn't make it. Zara lifted her head and stared at the photo. "She was brave," Eli said. "Braver than me." "You were both brave," Mason said, gently taking the photo. "Do you remember her name?" "Lena," Eli whispered. "She said we'd escape together." Mason scanned the image into the police database. As the facial recognition program began to work, Zara growled, deep and low. Her eyes locked on the screen. Mason turned. "What is it, girl?" Zara stood, ears high, body tense. Something in that image stirred her in a way Mason had never seen. Seconds later, the database pinged. "Match found." Mason clicked. "Lena Harper, age 9, reported missing 11 months ago. Last seen near a foster placement program in Kingsville. Case marked cold." Mason's jaw clenched. "She was real. She's been missing nearly a year." Eli looked up. "They didn't even search. They just said we ran away." Zara started pacing, like she sensed something rising, some truth about to surface. Mason stared at the screen, then at Eli. "If they buried her story," he said, "what else are they hiding?" Zara let out a sharp bark, then turned to the door. Whatever was buried wasn't going to stay buried much longer. The fog had lifted, but the forest still held its breath. Mason parked near the crash site, the wrecked truck now silent and taped off. But Zara wasn't interested in the wreck. Her nose was down, her pace urgent. She pulled away from the road, into the trees. "Go ahead, girl. Lead the way," Mason whispered, hand on his holster. They moved slowly, stepping over branches and tangled roots. Then Zara stopped. Just ahead, barely visible under layers of brush and rotting leaves, stood a gate, rusted, chained, and behind it, a broken wooden sign leaning sideways. "Camp Greenwood, Foster Care Retreat." Mason's blood ran cold. "It's real," he muttered. The gate creaked as he pushed it open. What lay beyond didn't look like a retreat. It looked like something forgotten. The cabin sagged. Windows shattered. Nature had tried to take it back. But there were signs it hadn't succeeded. A trail in the dirt. Fresh footprints. And the smell faint, but sharp, like chemicals and rot. Zara sniffed the ground, growled low, then looked back at Mason. "They've been here recently," he said. "Or still are. They didn't go inside." "Not yet." Mason snapped photos, marked the location, then slipped out the same way they came. Quiet, fast, and shaken. That night, they stayed at a roadside motel 2 miles out. Eli was asleep. Mason sat by the window, map spread on the bed. Zara laid near the door, eyes wide open. Then she froze, her ears twitched. Footsteps, soft, slow. Then a voice, faint, outside the window. "You sure it's him?" Another voice. Didn't say his name, just called him number 3. Mason reached for his gun, heart pounding. Zara was already at the door, growling, teeth bared. But when Mason flung it open, nothing. Just shadows, just trees. But they knew now. Eli was alive, and someone didn't like that. Mason shut the door, bolted it tight. "We're not safe anymore," he whispered. Zara growled low again, never breaking her stare from the window. Whatever Camp Greenwood was hiding, it had followed them. They returned at dawn. No backup, No noise, just Mason, Zara, and the truth waiting in the trees. The gate to Camp Greenwood creaked louder this time, like it knew they were coming back for more than just a look. Zara moved first, nose to the ground, tail stiff. Mason followed, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. Inside the first cabin, dust coated the floor, but not evenly. Tracks, fresh ones. Bunk beds lined the walls, each one small, too small. On the floor, child-sized shoes, pairs without socks. Some left in a hurry, some placed neatly, like someone made them line up. Zara stopped, whined. She turned toward a corner where a curtain hung unevenly. Behind it, steel cages. 3 of them, scratched, locked. One had a faded blanket, another had a bowl, empty but recently cleaned. Mason stepped closer. They kept them here, like animals. Zara's whine grew sharper. She turned again, this time toward the back of the building. A second door, unmarked. Mason reached for the handle. Lock. Move back, he whispered. He kicked hard once, twice, until the door cracked open. The room inside was freezing. A humming sound filled the space. A large commercial freezer stood at the back wall, padlocked shut. But it wasn't the freezer that made Mason's breath catch. It was the drawings, taped to the freezer door. Stick figures, a sun, a house, a girl with long hair and a red X over her face. And 5 names: Eli, Sarah, Leo, Lena, Jacob, all written in shaky crayon. Zara pawed at the freezer, whining urgently. Mason touched the drawings. He made them draw this. He kept their names. His eyes landed on one note scribbled beneath Eli's name. Still disobedient. Needs punishment. Zara barked once, then growled, deep in her chest. Mason stepped back. Whatever was inside that freezer, it wasn't food, and it wasn't just cold. It was evidence. Maybe worse. He grabbed his radio. Dispatch. Send everyone. We found it. Camp Greenwood wasn't abandoned. Zara backed away, tail low, eyes locked on the freezer, and from inside, something knocked. The wind howled through the broken windows of Camp Greenwood. But Zara didn't flinch. She kept sniffing the ground. Slow, deliberate, focused. Mason watched her carefully. What is it, girl? Zara paused by the cages. Then she sat, whined, her ears pinned back. And for a moment, it wasn't just the present she was sensing. It was memory, pain. Years ago, Zara had been pulled from a basement soaked in blood and terror. A dogfighting ring, metal chains, cruel hands, and the sounds of others like her crying in the dark. She'd known what it felt like to be trapped, to be used, to be thrown away. And now, she felt it again, in this place, this room. She let out a soft, low whimper, not from fear, but recognition. Mason stepped closer. You okay, girl? But Zara didn't move. Her head hung low, her nose near the floor, and then she looked up at him, eyes full of something deeper than instinct, as if to say, they did this to them too. Mason crouched beside her. You remember, don't you? She rested her head on his knee, eyes still fixed on the freezer door, where the drawings fluttered in the cold breeze. Mason took a breath. You know what this place was, what he did here. Zara stood again, this time more determined. She moved toward the far wall, sniffing hard. Behind an old shelf she scratched. Mason pushed it aside. A trap door, old wood, fresh dirt, marks along the edge. He looked at her. You think they're down there? Zara barked once. Mason grabbed his flashlight, heart pounding. This doesn't end here, does it? Zara stared at the trap door. Her body trembled, not from fear, but something older, something that had never left her bones. Survivors knew the scent of suffering and she could smell it. Fresh. Mason radioed back up again. We're going deeper. There may be more down below. Zara stood over the door, ready. Because she hadn't just come here to find others. She'd come to fight for them, the way someone once did for her. Zara's nose twitched. Then she bolted. Mason, a deputy called out. But he was already running, following her through the thicket. She tore through the woods, past the cages, past the freezer, deeper into Camp Greenwood's shadow. Mason to all units. K9 in pursuit. Possible suspect on foot. He barked into his radio, panting. Zara didn't hesitate. Her paws pounded the earth, locked on a scent trail Mason couldn't see, but she could feel it, like fire under her skin. The scent led to a smaller cabin tucked beneath leaning trees, half-rotted. Door ajar. Zara lunged inside. A man was there, mid-30s, dirty, eyes wild. The second he saw her, he reached for something, maybe a knife, maybe a bag. Too late. Don't move, Mason shouted, bursting. The man spun around, tried to run. Mason slammed him to the floor. Hands where I can see them. The man squirmed, silent. No wallet, no ID, just a key around his neck, and a cracked phone in his pocket. Zara stood inches from his face, growling, low and unbroken. You know her scent, don't you? Mason hissed. Because you made those kids bleed, just like they made her. He ripped the key from the man's neck, heart pounding. Mason unlocked the phone. Photos. Dozens. Some recent, some old. All of children. Eli, Len, others they hadn't even known were missing. The man said nothing, wouldn't speak, wouldn't blink. Zara sat at his side, tail stiff, watching him like she understood what he was. Mason stepped outside and called it in. Suspect in custody. No ID. Found at secondary structure. Phone contains images of victims, multiple. Request tech team and transport ASAP. Back inside, Zara still hadn't moved. Her growl had faded, but her body blocked the door, as if to say, he doesn't get out again. Mason looked at her. She didn't bark. She didn't snarl. She just stared, and in her stare was everything he needed to know. This was the man, the one who hurt them, the one she'd been chasing since the beginning. The man sat cuffed in the interrogation room, silent, staring. Mason stood on the other side of the glass, jaw tight. Zara sat beside him, eyes locked on the suspect, like she hadn't blinked in hours. Then the door opened. Eli stepped in, escorted by a social worker. The moment his eyes met the man's, he froze. His breathing quickened. Then he screamed. That's him. Everyone turn. He locked us in the pit. He told us no one would ever find us. Mason rushed forward, but Eli bolted out the door. Eli. Zara was already chasing him, slipping past the officers, out into the open. Eli ran fast for someone so small across the lot, through the alley, disappearing into the dusk. Zara followed the scent. 15 minutes passed. Then she stopped near an old concrete bridge. Nose twitching, she whined softly. Mason arrived moments later, flashlight sweeping the shadows. Zara, she barked once, then trotted under the bridge. There, huddled between trash bags and cold stone, was Eli, his arms wrapped tight around his knees, body shaking. Zara crawled close, pressing into him without a sound. Mason knelt beside them. Eli, it's okay. He's not going to hurt you ever again. Eli looked up, eyes red. They always say that. Mason stayed quiet. Eli clung to Zara's fur. Don't let them send me away again. Please. Mason sighed. I don't want that either. But we need to figure out where you belong. I belong here, Eli whispered, burying his face in Zara's side. With her. Zara didn't move. She stayed wrapped around him like a shield. Mason took a slow breath. What if we made sure the next place you go is one where she can stay too? Eli didn't answer, but the shaking eased. Zara licked his cheek, gently, like a promise. Mason stood. Come on, kid. Let's go home. For now, we stick together. Eli reached up, not for Mason, for Zara, and she led him out from under the bridge. Step by step, out of the dark. The suspect still refused to speak. Not a word, not a name, just silence. But his phone, That spoke volumes. Mason sat at his desk, eyes locked on the screen. The tech team had cracked it open. Beneath the photos, there were messages. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Most looked harmless at first. Campfire starts Friday. Same drop as last month. New counselors arriving soon. But they weren't about camping. Not even close. Each camp was a code. Greenwood was only one of them. Mason clicked another message. Hollow Ridge clean and quiet. Pick up at 2 a.m. He scrolled faster. Every text painted a map. Cities, forests, buildings long forgotten. A network. A system. Camp Greenwood hadn't been an isolated horror. It was just a thread in something much larger. Zara sat behind him, tense, watching. When Mason muttered, "There are more camps," Zara growled. Low, steady, like she already knew. Mason turned to her. "You feel it too, huh?" Zara stood up and walked to the board, where photos of children were pinned beside maps and evidence. She sat in front of it, staring, waiting. Mason shook his head. This was never just about Eli. They've been moving kids through these places for years. Quiet, off-grid, forgotten. He picked up the key that had been around the man's neck. It wasn't just for the freezer. It had another tag on it stamped with coordinates. He typed them in. A forest. Different state. Another camp. Zara let out a sharp bark. Mason grabbed his jacket. "Looks like we're not done." He turned to her, serious now. "We've only pulled one thread, girl. But if we keep pulling..." Zara walked beside him, stiff-legged and focused. Eli watched from the hallway as they left. "Will you come back?" he asked quietly. Mason nodded. "We will. But there's more kids out there, just like you." Zara brushed against Eli gently. Then she was gone. Into the night. Back on the trail. Because this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The social worker smiled softly. "It's just temporary, Eli. A quiet home, just until things settle." Eli didn't move. His hands gripped Zara's collar like a lifeline. His lips trembled. "I don't want to go," he whispered. "Please, don't make me go." Mason knelt beside him. "It's not forever. Just a few nights. I'll visit." Zara too. Eli shook his head hard. "She won't come back. They always say that." Zara pressed her head against his chest. And that's when something changed. She stayed. Against policy. Against protocol. Against every line in the handbook. Mason nodded. "All right, girl. You stay." So Zara curled up on the floor beside Eli's borrowed bed in the small upstairs room. She didn't sleep. Not really. Her ears twitched with every creak of the house. Her eyes stayed locked on the door. Eli didn't sleep either. Not at He lay curled beside her, hand in her fur, blinking up at the ceiling, scared of every shadow. But sometime past midnight, his breath slowed, his hand relaxed. And for the first time since Mason had found him in the woods, he slept without shaking. In the morning, Mason knocked softly. The door creaked open. Zara raised her head, tail thumping gently. Eli sat up fast, heart pounding, then spotted Mason, and he didn't run. But he didn't look at Mason either. He turned to Zara, wrapped his arms around her. "She's my only safe place," he whispered. Mason felt something twist in his chest. "She's here for as long as you need," he said. "I promise." Zara looked up at Mason, then back at Eli. No barking, no growling, just quiet presence. The kind that only came from surviving something dark and choosing to stay anyway. Downstairs, the social worker waited with a folder full of paperwork. But upstairs, Zara was the only one who mattered. And as she curled around Eli once more, she knew she hadn't just rescued him. She had become his home. Mason stared at the laptop screen. The article was ready. Photos, maps, names, the key, the phone, everything they'd uncovered at Camp Greenwood. Every scar, every drawing, every coded message. He clicked publish, and the silence broke. Within hours, The story spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up. The public gasped. Hashtags trended. Children in chains. The Greenwood survivors. Zara the rescue dog. Emails flooded in. Calls. Statements. Then something unexpected happened. Survivors, grown now, began to speak. From different states, different names. Same patterns. Same fear. Same man. And same kid. By day's end, the FBI was involved. More files surfaced. Old cases reopened. Buried reports suddenly mattered again. At the Child Advocacy Center, Mason got a call. A girl had been found. Lena, thin, tired, alive. She was in protective custody, just 2 counties over. When Eli heard, he froze. Is it really her? Mason nodded. She asked about you. They brought her in under tight security. And when she saw the photo of Zara, her face lit up for the first time. She found us, Lena whispered. When we were underground, we knew help was coming. Zara stepped forward quietly, ears perked. Lena fell to her knees and hugged her like she'd been waiting forever. She saved me, she whispered into Zara's fur. I thought you were just a dream. Mason looked away, blinking back something in his eye. Later that night, he updated the case board. 3 more names had been added to the list of children found because of Zara, and more were coming. The case had blown wide open. But amid all the agents, news vans and reports, Zara never changed. She didn't care about headlines, only that Eli slept without nightmares now, only that Lena smiled again, and when Mason scratched her behind the ears and said, "You did good, girl," she looked back at him, calm, steady, and ready, because somewhere, another child still waited, and Zara was listening. The paperwork was signed. Zara was officially retired. It wasn't due to injury or age. It was Mason's call. She's done more than any K9 I've known, he told the chief, but she's not just a K9 anymore. So they changed her title, from officer to something soft, emotional support companion. She didn't know the difference, but Eli did. Zara moved in with him a week before the adoption hearing. Her bed was placed beside his. Though most nights she never used it, she preferred to sleep against the door, just in case. Eli had stopped waking up crying. He laughed now, played, drew pictures that didn't end in red crayon and scratchy X's. He still carried the photo, the one with Lena's face, scratched out, but now, he'd drawn it again. This time her smile was whole. At the adoption ceremony, the room was packed with people who knew the story. Reporters, agents, even survivors who had once been numbers, now had names again, but Eli barely noticed them. He stood in front of the judge, Zara sitting proudly beside him, in her new vest. The judge smiled gently. Eli, is there anything you'd like to say before this becomes official? Eli nodded. He took a shaky breath, then looked down at Zara. I don't remember everything, he said. Not all the pain, not every bad night. His voice trembled, but he kept going. But I remember her. She never left me, even when I ran, even when I couldn't talk. She stayed. Zara leaned into his side. She's not just a dog, Eli whispered. She's my family. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Mason stood in the back, arms folded, heart full. He'd seen Zara pull terrified children from darkness, but this was her proudest moment. The judge smiled, voice warm. Then let it be known, from this day forward, Eli Mason has a forever home. Cheers erupted, but Zara didn't flinch. She just looked up at Eli and wagged her tail, because she knew her mission was never just about saving him. It was staying. She just looked up at Eli and wagged her tail. If Zara's journey moved you, hit like, share her story, and subscribe for more true tales of loyalty and love.